So you want financial freedom and you want to quit your job? Hell yes. Okay, I am 100% on board. In this video, we're going to talk about 4 different steps in order to help you quit your job and gain that financial freedom. And we're also going to talk about and start with one of the biggest myths that's going to prevent you from getting there. Now, before we get started, I want to first define what we mean by financial freedom. Everybody has a little bit different definition, and it's important that we start off on the same page. Now, when I say financial freedom, what I mean is the ability to have control over your time and to have freedom over your decisions. You choose the clients you want to work with, you choose the schedule that you have, you choose when you want to and when you can go on vacation and how you set your schedule. It's not about having $100 million. It's not about having so much money that you never have to make decisions based on money ever again and that you never have to work again. It is simply the freedom to make decisions that are of your own. And that is usually going to start with quitting your job. So that's what this is all about. Now that we have that definition though, let's dive in. My name is Patrick Menefee and I'm here to help you level up your money, your mindset, and your mission in order to help you become the best possible version of yourself. Because honestly, I believe that the world needs more people who are playing up to their full potential. And the reason that this is so important is because I believe that the only way that you can do that is if you have the freedom to make your own decisions. Now, I left my job 3 years ago, which is crazy that it's already been 3 years, and it was the best professional decision that I've made. Unfortunately, we usually make this out to be way harder than it needs to be, and that is where the myth comes in. So let me start by playing a little bit of a game with you. I'm gonna be a little bit of a mind reader. Maybe not, we'll see. I want you to come up with and think about the number that you need in terms of monthly or annual income in order to be comfortable quitting your job. What is it? If you're in real estate, or if you want to be in real estate, I bet that number is somewhere around $10,000 a month in passive income. Am I right? If I'm wrong, it's okay, stick with me. But for some reason, that is the number that we lock in on all the time. For me, that was my target for a while. I have notebooks that talk about how $10,000 a month is where I'm gonna be. There's 2 problems with that. The first problem is usually that number is totally arbitrary. I don't know why we always pick $10,000 a month, but it is so common. Maybe it's because it's 6 figures, it's a round number, I don't really know. But the problem with it is that when it's not tied to anything very strict and serious, sometimes it's tied to what our current income level is, sometimes it's tied to what we heard on a podcast, sometimes it's tied to what our friend makes. If it's not tied directly to what we need in order to quit, it's not a worthwhile metric. And it sets the bar too high. The second problem that I have with it is we think that it needs to be passive. I want to lay out this scenario because I think people don't realize how absurd it sounds when they say it. The minimum bar that we have for quitting our job is either I'm going to continue doing something that I dislike for the rest of my life, or the only way that I'm going to stop doing that is either when I die or when I have enough income coming in that I built on the side while working full time that I never have to work again. Isn't that a little bit of a high bar? Maybe there's an in-between somewhere. The in-between is what we're gonna focus on, because once we can shatter that myth and we realize that it doesn't need to be this crazy number and it doesn't need to all be passive, and maybe we can do a little bit of work sometime for the rest of our life, now that creates freedom. And now we have the ability to get there way faster than if we don't break through that myth first. Now, all of this leads me to the first step we already covered a little bit of, but I'm gonna spell it out very explicitly. The first step is identify exactly how much money you need to make in order to quit your job. What is your target income level for quitting? This is your true financial freedom number. And when you do this, I want to challenge you. Do not think about it in the context of how much you make right now. Think about it in terms of how much you need to make. See, quitting your job doesn't mean replacing your income. We usually think, okay, I make $100,000, so I've got to make $100,000 in my business, otherwise I can't quit. That's not how it works. Financial freedom, the way that we defined it, means covering your expenses, not replacing your income. When I was getting ready to quit, I inadvertently created this tool that you can download below. It's called the Acre Financial Freedom Analyzer. This tool is a way to simplify your expenses in order to truly identify what your financial freedom target is. You can go to the link in the description. You can download this. I encourage you to walk through it step by step and do this for yourself if you are trying to create this financial freedom. When you go through this, you'll understand exactly how much money you're spending. You'll be able to understand where you're wasting money, where you can cut some things out, where you can lower the bar a little bit. You'll also need to add in things like insurance, health insurance, things that your company currently pays for that you're gonna have to pay for out of pocket. You can cut out things that maybe you have to spend money on because of your job, but you're not gonna need to going forward. Then you also add in your lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle do you wanna live? Can you live, would it be worth it to live a little bit more modest lifestyle for the next year if it meant that you could quit your job and build up even faster after that? What is the lifestyle that you wanna live? Doesn't mean that you have to go that way, but that's where you choose. All of that goes into creating your target number. Once you know what that number looks like, you have your target to quit. You don't need to make $10,000 a month if the number is not $10,000 a month. And I'll tell you, usually that number is way less than what you expect. For me, when I did this, I went from my target being $10,000 a month in passive income to I needed to make $5,000 a month in order to cover all of my expenses. So the second part of this, step 2, is how are you going to create that income? And that's where the myth got debunked for me. It doesn't all need to be passive. So I have $5,000 that I need to be able to make up in order to be able to quit my job. At the time, I had $2,000 in passive income. I had 21 rental doors, and that was my source of income at the time outside of my job. By shifting my mindset and looking at it in a little bit different way, all of a sudden it opens up a ton of possibilities for how I can quit. Now, the first thing that I thought was I needed to make all of that $5,000 passive. So I had 21 doors at the time. That got me to about $2,000 a month. That meant that I needed at least 50 doors to get to my financial freedom number. If that is the only target, if passive is the only target, then okay, I've got a long ways to go. But if I change my target and if I can include active income in there too, now that changes everything. Here's what I encourage you to do. When you think about how much money you need to make in order to quit your job, when you look at that number that we just figured out, stop looking at it on just a monthly basis. Extend the timeline a little bit. Extend the timeline from 1 month to 3 months or 6 months. Think about it this way. You're a real estate agent, or maybe you're flipping houses or wholesaling houses. $3,000 a month is how much you need to make. Well, okay, you could flip a deal, you could wholesale a deal and get $3,000 and do one deal every single month. Or you know what you could do? You could extend the timeline to 6 months. Now I've got to make $18,000 over the course of 6 months. Is that a little bit more doable than having to make that same amount of income, especially passively, every single month? Hell yes, it is. So that was the big change for me, was I changed my time horizon. I allowed active income to play a part and not just passive income. And I spread my timeline out to say, if I can make this money over the next 6 to 9 months, then hell yes, I'm good to go. So for me, I was flipping houses. I had a couple of flips that were ongoing, and that set my second level of criteria. My criteria was that I needed to have a flip. I had 2 flips at the time. I needed to have 1 flip that was complete and on the market. So I needed to have my active source of income already starting to generate revenue. By setting that target, I knew that money was coming in. It may not come in right on schedule. It may come in a little bit later. That's why step number 3 is so important. Step number 3 is how much cash do you have? How much cash do you need to have? And what is your target in order to quit? Now, when I talk about cash, I'm talking about cash in 3 different buckets. The first bucket is your emergency fund. The second bucket is your runway. We'll get to that in a second. The third bucket is your investable capital. So your emergency fund is, for me, I think it was $12,000 to $15,000. And that was in a bank account that I was never going to touch. The only way that I touch that is if shit hits the fan, I've got to break the glass and I am desperate. The second bucket though, this is the important one. I knew that my criteria was that my flip was on the market. That meant that with it being on the market, this was back in 2020, I had 1 to 2 months before this thing would sell. But my criteria for my runway was I wanted 9 months. So if I had 9 months worth of income, then if that pushed out from 60 days to my deal closing to even 6 months, I was okay because I had that $3,000 a month. I had 9 months of that in my reserve account. So think about that for you and set that target for each one of those. Now it gives you something to work towards. My criteria was the $12,000 or $12,000 or $15,000 there in the emergency fund. $27,000 is what it came out to be roughly in my operating account. So I knew that if I didn't have $27,000 in there, I wasn't going to quit. I needed to start generating more capital and I could do more flips. I could keep working. I could keep saving money, doing whatever I needed to do to fill that up to $27,000 because that became my target. So I needed to have an active source of income. I needed to have my emergency fund set and I needed to have that operating account set. If those 3 things were good, then I was ready to move on to step 4. And step 4 is, what does your personal and financial stability need to look like? I had a project that was going on for one of my rentals and I was doing a BRRRR and I had a bunch of debt on my credit card because that's how I financed the rehab. I was in the process of refinancing this property and my criteria then was that I could not quit my job until I had paid off all of my personal debt by refinancing this loan. So for me, I needed to stabilize my finances. My personal finances were a little out of whack because I had funded a lot of a renovation for one of my rental properties with my personal credit card. And so I didn't want to quit my job with that looming over my head. I needed to get that taken care of first. The way that I was doing that was by refinancing that deal. Even if I had the other buckets in place, I was not going to allow myself to quit until my financial position was stabilized by refinancing and paying off all of that debt. For you, maybe there's something else. What is your criteria? What does stability look like for you? What are the conditions that need to be met in your life in order for that to be for you to be able to quit? If all steps 1 through 3 are taken care of, you have your target amount of income, you have an active way to get there and or a passive way to get there, you have your reserves in place, and you have all the cash that you need in place, then what does the situation in your life need to be? Do you have a major upcoming event like a wedding? Are you getting ready to have a baby and you need to either quit right beforehand so that you have the time freedom because that's what you want, or you want to quit after maternity leave, paternity leave, whatever it is? What is your criteria in your life that you need to have stabilized? Do you have student loans that you want to get paid off? Once you have these steps down and you've got all of this criteria in place, you have a bulletproof roadmap to quitting your job. You know exactly how much money you need to make. You know exactly what process you're going to go through to get there, and then it's a matter of executing. You know how much cash you need. So you know that maybe it's a couple years down the road because I need to flip 10, 15 properties to fill up these accounts, and then I need to save a lot of money. And in the 4th step, I need to have this amount of stability in my life. I need to have these loans paid off. I need to have X, Y, or Z things done. When you have all of those things done, then there's no question about whether or not you can quit, whether or not you can gain that financial freedom that you so badly want. I'll give you one final example of the power of these steps and of this criteria. I had set all of this criteria out. I had met all of the criteria. It was a Saturday morning and I was going out to check out one of my properties. I was getting ready to quit the following Friday. I was putting in my 2 weeks notice the following Friday. I came home and I found out that we were about to have a baby. Not about to, still had 9 months. I found out that a baby was on the way. That was not a part of my plan. That was unexpected. Did it add a little bit of question to category 4 in terms of stability? Maybe a little bit, but because I had bulletproof criteria in place, I had set the clear target for myself. And there was no question of whether or not I was still going to quit my job. I still put in my 2 weeks notice the Friday after I found out that we were having an unexpected baby. That is the power of creating this criteria. If the target is just an arbitrary date or an arbitrary income amount, there's always a reason to push it off. There's always more money to make. There's always the next promotion that we might get at work. There's always the next event around the corner. Whatever it may be, there's always something. But when you have these 4 steps, when you go through these steps and you have that criteria in place, there's no reason for you not to quit your job. So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope that shattering the myth of how hard it needs to be, I hope that helps level the playing field and help you realize that this is achievable. And I hope these 4 steps are something that you can take to heart. I hope that you will actually do these 4 steps. And I encourage you, first of all, like this video if it's helpful, subscribe to the channel so you can get more of these. Also comment, reach out to me, let me know. Did you go through these steps? And if so, what is your criteria? Did that add clarity for you? Because if you do that, it's going to help you create that financial freedom that you so badly want.